1 week into spring ball. What have we learned so far? And men's basketball loses in the Big 12 tournament. Where do they go from here? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team, and remember, use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And like I've been saying, guys, we also have another new sponsor, Cut. I love betting, guys, as you know, and betting on anything. Sports games, it's exactly what I like to do with my free time. The Cut app is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's legal in 40-plus states. Cut has customizable odds, tracking capabilities, and an entire social network with group chats, user profiles, and rewards. All payment, no need for Venmo. Basically, guys, like I've been telling you, if you want to make deals with people even you don't know or your friends, you bet on a certain game and you just want to do it one-on-one with your buddy, Cut is the way to go. It is a really good app. You can really bet on literally anything when it comes to sports. When Taylor Swift in the NFL was happening, you could bet on how many times she'd be shown on the screen. Great things on the app. I really, really recommend it. Use our promo code BELIEVEUCF for a 10% welcome bonus deposit. Don't forget that promo code CUT. Put your money where your mouth is. All right, guys. We're back. Back to being solo dolo. Nick is not on this episode. Hopefully we'll get him back next week. He actually was in New York this week, so that was kind of a nice vacation for him. But me, I stayed here, and we got spring ball. Hopefully I'll be able to make it out to some of the spring practices next week. That'll be really nice, but luckily all the content this week from the practice fields has been really nice. We really got a lot of content to talk about this week because of that. The post-practice interviews, I think one really stood out, and we'll get into that. But listen, 1 week into spring ball is always I don't want to say the most hyped, but definitely the one where eyeballs are really watching specific things, right? First time you're seeing the freshmen, most of the freshmen, out on the spring practice fields, and who's going to kind of step up and really catch the eye. If you remember when Xavier Townsend was a freshman or incoming freshman, he was a guy that you kind of watched in spring practice and are like, okay, he's clearly a guy that the coaching staff really likes. He's proving himself, all that sort of stuff, right? Well, this year, like we said last week, there's a lot of things that are needing to be answered. Now, I'm recording this on Friday. It's getting posted on Friday. So I'm curious with the post-practice interviews if we'll hear from, some other coaches, preferably the offensive coordinator of this team, and Tim Harris Jr. But I found it really interesting. Obviously, we heard from Gus and KJ early on in the week, and there wasn't anything that we heard from Gus and KJ that maybe we didn't already expect or, that we didn't already know. It was basically the same coach speak, the same quarterback speak. I will say that the one thing that I see that has changed, not so much changed, but the one thing that has altered this year in some of the speak, and maybe it's KJ, and that's just who KJ is, but when KJ was getting asked about his goals on the season and what he expects out of the team and what the team goals are this year, he answered the same question to multiple people. It was, we're going to take it one game, one practice, 1 week at a time. We're not going to get too ahead of ourselves. We know what we want to do, and we're going to keep it. Now, and listen, that's a normal answer for a lot of, teams or quarterbacks or whatever, right? It's a common answer. But what I found interesting is if you go back to last year and the answers that we were getting in regards to what are your goals and expectations, it was we want to be in the conference title game. We want to make the college football playoff. It was those goals that you expect to hear. So, though it's not that big of a deal, I find it intriguing because I'm sure, and I might be wrong on this, I'm sure some of the conversation is with the team and Coach Gus and everybody. He's like, we have a really good team. We have a really good roster. Well, we need to take it one practice, 1 week, 1 day at a time. Because if we start looking ahead to the season, if we start looking ahead to conference titles, if we start looking ahead to all those things, you're not focused on the here and now, right? And I find that very interesting. Even KJ was saying that he's really close with Kobe Hudson and that they are like boys, like that's his dude, right? But they got stuff to work on. That quarterback-receiver relationship is very vital and very important, especially with your number one guy. And obviously UCF posted a clip of KJ throwing the deep ball to Kobe, and that was a really nice play to see. Don't know who the corner was. I was going to tweet out, is it bad that I only really care about who the corner was on that play? But it's spring ball. You know, you like the glitz and glamour plays, and, you know, we'll focus on corners and defense as we get closer to the season. But I truly think that as soon as UCF got KJ, the mindset for the season shifted, right? I think Gus knew it. I think fans knew it. Nothing against Timmy McClain, but the whole mindset shifted. So for spring ball, the mindset is we know we're going to be good. We know we have the players to be good and be successful. We just need to make sure we don't get in our own way. If we already know we're just this good and we know we're going to run through everybody that we're playing, you're bound to slip up. If you're already looking to September, you're bound to slip up in a couple practices in spring ball, which is not what you want out of this part of the season. So I found that very interesting. Another thing I found interesting is how many clips Burdell Richardson was in online and how much his name was brought up. I mean, RJ Harvey brought his name up. A couple other players brought his name up. Listen, we talked last week saying the UCF needed a number 3, right? Who was going to be that number 3 guy? And I just said Chauncey Magwood because in my head, it's basically why they recruited him, was if Javon or Kobe left the next year, you got an SEC guy that kind of needs some playing time to slot in. Burdell Richardson, granted, we got many more practices left. We got a whole fall camp. It seems like he's going to be that next guy. And again, that's early talk. We don't know. But some of the catches he was making and some of the plays we've heard that he's making make it to where you can safely assume that if he continues that path and he continues making plays, that you will definitely see Burdell on the field early. Now, that's up for whatever, but that's what we are insinuating with what we're seeing and what we're hearing, is the older guys are he's catching their eye. And even RJ Harvey said Burdell, you know, it can kind of annoy you sometimes because he's asking so many questions. And he just wants to know everything. And I think that's important to hear out of a guy that, listen, honestly, you were excited to get. A lot of schools wanted Burdell Richardson. You got him, and he's already proving to be a very high commodity for this UCF offense, potentially. And we'll see how the spring goes. I want to talk about Ted Roof, new UCF defensive coordinator. Now, everybody on Twitter was going and talking about the tackling comment and the stopping the run comment. where he basically described tackling like it was kindergarten, saying if you can't tackle, you don't win. Or if you can't tackle, you're not going to be very good. And if you can't stop the run, you won't win. If you can't stop the run, you're going to lose a lot of games. And everybody on Twitter was having a joke with that, and understandably. But I mean, with this team, let's call what the defense was last year. He knows what the issues were. And everybody talked about that, but nobody talked about, in my opinion, the most important thing he said in that 10, 15-minute press conference. We've been talking about who the linebackers were going to be. Who's going to start at linebacker? You have so many options. I think he basically just told you. In that one press conference room, I think he kind of told you. Now, it's a long time. He also said he does not have anybody slated into a specific position. He has nobody slated in to start yet. It's early. They hadn't worn pads yet in the time that, he had the interview. But he immediately started talking about the depth, but also he was talking about the older guys. And he said the young guys don't know what they don't know. And that's why you have the older guys, and the 18-year-olds are at disadvantage to the 23-year-olds that have been playing college football for 3, 4, 5 years. The vibe I got is Ted Roof is kind of leaning towards a couple of SEC guys. That's the vibe I'm getting. Now, I might be wrong, right? I might not know exactly what he's thinking or what he's going to do. But when he was saying those things, I'm like, okay. So Ladarius Tennison is one, right? From Ole Miss. You can kind of safely assume he's going to be your starter at the one slot. And we saw a clip of him made a really good play. And I think with that, you could probably slot him at linebacker. I might be wrong, but that's one place. And then Ethan Barr, who Ted Roof coached, I think you can assume he's probably, right now, those are your two. He was Vanderbilt captain, starter, all those things. I think you could safely assume right now those two are leaders in the bullpen to start at linebacker. Because the way that Ted Roof was talking was almost like young guys don't know what they don't know. You need, quality stars that know what they're doing. So the only thing I want to make sure is that, number one, the young guys are getting that opportunity to even have a chance, right? And that you also are identifying who those next group of guys are. The Andrew Harrises of the world, right? Like, you've got a young guy, was a true freshman last year. Not saying he should start this year, but that that you are identifying your next two starters. Because I think we all know, most likely, even after the spring, you're going to see a couple transfers, right? A couple linebackers are probably going to move on. And then especially after this next season, you'll probably see a couple young guys move on too. Because if they're like looking at it and they're like, they're continuously bringing in linebackers. We didn't see the field this year. We need to go get some playing time. So I think UCF just needs to identify who those guys that they truly think are the next lineup, acknowledge that to them, and continue working with them to get them ready for not just this year, but the year later, the year after, to make sure you're keeping those guys on the roster and not getting them to be in their head about, I'm never going to play for 4 years. But going into the season, I think going older, especially at that position, which you were not that good in last year, is needed. So if Tennison and Barr are your two starters at linebacker, which would be the least shocking thing, let's roll. And if one of them is struggling, you have good depth to exchange, right? And we'll see in spring ball. But if I had to put early money, it'd probably be those two guys. But so far, that's everything we've seen or heard. Obviously, spring games is in a couple weeks, 3 weeks. I'm excited for that. Again, like I said, hopefully I'll be able to go out to the spring ball practices next week to give a little bit more insight on stuff that I'm seeing. Like I'm, seeing what other people are seeing right now. But hopefully I'll be able to make it out to spring practices next week to kind of see with my own eyes and give, my thoughts on what I've seen. But that's going to wrap it up for not this episode, but for football. Let's go into a little bit of UCF basketball. Somber UCF basketball. Like happy, but somber. UCF basketball won. They won their first game, right? They beat Oklahoma State. We'll take a win. You got a win in the Big 12 conference tournament. Huge. They lost the next game, the very next day to BYU. Made it close, was a 3-point game at one point, and then BYU just came away with it. Not too much to say on this. I think what we can acknowledge is that the NIT is very much in play. I would be shocked. I think UCF has all but safely locked up an NIT bid. I think that's getting announced, if I'm not mistaken, in a couple days. I think so. We'll find out if UCF got a bid for that very soon. But the fact that Johnny Dawkins in his first year in the Big 12 did what he did is incredible. Just want to give a shout out to the players, the staff, everybody there. I think this is only going to help UCF in the future. I'm excited to see what they can do in the NIT. I know last year I think they won 2 or 3 games. This year I think they can make a little bit of a run. Right now we are slated, and I don't know how this is going to work. Right now we're slated to play South Florida. That is not confirmed. That is just, again, rumors. That would be a game, and that would not be an easy game because South Florida is actually pretty decent this year. So UCF basketball season probably isn't over yet, which is exciting. It's an exciting thing, exciting time. You have a lot of recruits that are excited about UCF basketball. And again, this team's going to look very different next year. So let's enjoy this team while we can, because next year I think, again, it's going to be, I don't want to say more of the same, but semi more of the same. Like you're going to go out, you're going to get a bunch of transfers to fill your roster. I don't know. I think you've got, because I don't know if Jalen Sellers has an extra year. I think he might. I think Jalen Sellers might have an extra year. Let me see. I thought he was a senior, but I don't think he walked at senior day. Now, granted, I might be completely wrong. Sorry, let me see. Yeah, I think he's got an extra year. So he'll be back next year because he played at Ball State for 2 years. So that's exciting. I mean, you're going to get your leading scorer back. And then you'll be adding Mikey Williams and a couple other guys to it. So excited to see. When do they announce the NIT? NIT 2024 announcement. I'm pretty sure it's literally like in a day or so. Oh, the 17th. So on Sunday, they will be announcing it at 8:30 p.m. With 32 teams set to compete. First round games are set for March 19th and 20th. So literally, that's actually really soon. So we might be having more UCF basketball literally next week. That's kind of crazy. But we'll see. We'll see who wins the American tournament, because I think somebody in the comments, if you're way more inept with, the NCAA tournament and seeding and all that, because I know USF was, if they win the tournament, if they win the American tournament, I'm pretty sure they will then get a bid to go to the NCAA tournament. I think if they lose the tournament, they won't go, which I think wasn't really going to be the case for about a week there, but because they lost their last game, it kind of screwed everything up. But UCF could end up playing a lot of Florida teams. So I think Florida State's on there. You have, USF. So there's a high chance UCF pulls a Florida team in the first round anyway. But March 17th, 2 days from now, book your calendars, 8:30 p.m., watch together, see who UCF pulls, or if UCF gets pulled, even though I'm fairly confident they will be. But just excited for the basketball team. 2 straight years for postseason basketballs. Always something you want. Hopefully next year you can kind of vie for one of those, March Madness spots. Like the NIT is nice, but we all know what pulls the ratings, what pulls the viewership is March Madness. And that's exactly what UCF wants to do. And they've got an opportunity to do it. Big 12 basketball, their Big 12 is going to have 8 to 9 teams in the tournament. So, excited to see where Johnny Dawkins can take it. Hopefully, we hear about a contract extension very, very soon. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Charge On. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Do all you do. We greatly appreciate it. If you haven't checked it out, I have a new I don't want to call it a show, but a new UCF Report podcast on the Zone Heads Orlando podcast feed. You can go check that out. They air on Tuesdays. Those are the opportunities for you to hear about baseball, softball, soccer, every other sport along with football and basketball. So if you want more UCF content, go check that out and follow me on all social media at Sean M.R. Green. All right, everybody, this has been Charge On presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.